Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Doris, and I'm so glad to be on YouTube. So for those who don't know me, I am the founder and creator of Judah David Creations. It's a little crochet shop that I made in honor of our firstborn son, Judah David. He was born premature at 24 weeks, lived for 5 days, and now is in heaven with the Lord. And crochet really became my safe haven, a place for me to process my grief, a place for me to really ground myself in a season that was really trying. And since then, this shop has grown in so many ways that I really can't make it up myself. I now teach classes locally in the community here in Macon, Georgia, which is where I live. I offer support groups at the local hospital where I delivered, and I get to sell products on Etsy. And as I've been going about this journey, I've had a lot of people that are not local to Macon, might not live in Georgia, who've asked me to teach them a crochet class or want to join my classes, but they physically can't be here. So I'm so excited to announce that this year I am launching a YouTube channel for all of you guys to join me, not only for the classes, but to learn different skills. This is really beginner friendly space for you to learn not only the craft of crochet, but hopefully to be part of this community. It's really been a safe haven for me, and so I hope you'll be able to find a safe haven for yourself. So I'd love for you to join me on this journey. Stay tuned because our first video is going to be a beginner crochet series, and so you'll follow along with our very first take-home kits that you can order on my shop. And so I'm so excited again for you to join me, and I can't wait to see what we make together. Love y'all. Bye. All right, so in today's class, the Beginner 1 class is all about the basics of a crochet swatch. So we are gonna learn one stitch in this class. This is the single crochet stitch, and it looks like this. Here's a swatch that I quickly did within the last few minutes while I was sitting here. But it's a really just simple, very easy, very common crochet stitch, and it's really, really great for beginners to learn. It is very tight, as you can see. There's not a lot of holes or spacing, so it's a great option, especially with cotton yarn, for dish cloths or washcloths, things like that. So this is a great option for you. And one thing that Miss Cheryl always says is that the dishes don't really care if your edges are straight or not. And so what we're gonna do in this class, we're really gonna focus on 3 things. So we're gonna focus on straight edges, making sure your edges are nice and straight. We're gonna focus on stitch count, so making sure we maintain the appropriate stitch count. And then we're also gonna talk about tension. So just be sure to focus on all those areas, and you will be able to complete your swatch today. And again, take your time. Things take patience and practice. So let's start with the basics. So like I said, if you're feeling tense, make sure you relax your hands. We're gonna look at maintaining stitch count, and that is where we introduce our stitch markers. So your stitch markers are like your training wheels. You're gonna use that to make sure you have the appropriate number of stitches, and I'll show you how to use that as well. Spend some time practicing. So let's say, we look at the chain stitch and you realize it's a little difficult. It doesn't hurt to just take a few minutes to work on that before you move forward. And of course, if you need a break, if you ever need a break in your work, be sure to remove your hook to place the stitch marker in the loop you just made so your stitches don't unravel. And of course, if you make a mistake, the beautiful thing about crochet is that anytime you work stitches, you can just pull it out and unravel it if there are mistakes. But let's talk about holding your yarn. So as you can see, you have a ball of yarn here, and there's what they call the center pull. When you get your yarn, we'll have a little tag, a label in there that tells you the color of the yarn, so you're able to reorder if you would like. This part right here, the short side, is your tail. So you want about a palm length tail, okay? The longer side that's connected to the ball of your yarn is your working yarn. So that is where your non-dominant hand will be holding. So I am right-handed, so my non-dominant hand and my left hand will be holding the yarn, while my right hand holds the hook. It'd be opposite if you are left-handed. So let me show you how you hold your hook. There are 2 different holds for crochet: the pencil hold or the knife hold. I naturally hold my hook, I think more like a pencil. Let's see. I have to do it so I can see. Sometimes I forget. Naturally, I hold my hook more like a pencil, right? The knife hold is a little bit like this. okay? So figure out which hold you prefer. Again, we have pencil hold or knife hold. Okay, so the first step in creating a crochet project is creating your slip knot. And your slip knot is how you get your yarn onto your hook. There are some steps here in your cheat sheet, so be sure to refer to that. But I'm gonna put it to the side so you can watch my hands while I do it. Okay, in my non-dominant hand, which is my left hand, I'm gonna take my pointer finger and I'm gonna wrap the yarn around my finger towards myself 2 times. Do that again. Just like this. Okay. Now we're gonna label this A. We're gonna label this one B. So we're gonna take A, which is closer to my palm, up and over B. Notice I'm using my thumb and my middle finger to hold the tail steady. Then I'm gonna take B, up over A, off my nail, and down here, which will create this little knot. You should have 1 loop on your finger. If I pull the tail, it will create a tighter knot, and that is your slip knot. Okay, let's do that one more time. Wrap around 2 times towards yourself, just like that. Holding your tail steady with your thumb and your middle finger. You're gonna go up over B, up, off your finger, creating a knot underneath. And then pull. All right, once you've pulled and you have that loop, you're gonna replace your finger with your hook. And we wanna tighten your hook down. So with the working yarn, you're gonna pull until your loop snags onto your hook. Now it's important, once we're here, we don't want our hook to be so tight that it's not able to move up and down. We don't want our loop to be so tight that it can't move up and down. So if you need to loosen it, just tug on that knot and it'll loosen it for you. But I want you to take a few minutes and try to glide your loop up and down your hook. If it's gliding nicely, that means you have really, really good space. Okay, so take a few minutes, practice your slip knot, and then we'll come back. All right, so once you have your slip knot on your hook, I didn't have mine. Once you have your slip knot on your hook, we have to talk about maintaining tension. So if you play music, say you're a guitar player, right? And the guitar strings, in order to make music, your guitar has to be tuned, not too tight and not too loose, right? If it's too loose, you can't really play the string. If it's too tight, you risk snapping the string. Crochet is pretty similar. So you want to create perfect tension that will allow you to feed the yarn through the loop. And that'll make more sense as we get going. But I'm going to show you some different methods for maintaining and managing proper tension. You can refer to this in your cheat sheet as well. But the first option that is very easy, that I usually show some of my students, is taking your palm of your left hand or your non-dominant hand with your crochet hook and the tail in your right hand. See how I'm holding the tail close to the hook? We're gonna take the working yarn, that's the long side, and place it in between our middle finger and our pointer finger. When I turn my palm towards myself, and then I'm going to use my thumb and my middle finger to steady the tail. Now I might have to pull the working yarn down so that the tension is there. You just play around with it to see if it feels tight enough. And you'll be able to see it. If it's really loose like that, then you won't be able to pull the yarn. If it's too tight, if the distance is too close, then you also won't be able to pull it either, right? So I want you to take a few minutes and try to work that through, okay? Just manage that tension. We'll come back to showing you the chain stitch, but I definitely just want you to try that first option, is placing the finger right here, okay? Your second option is to weave it through your fingers. So the first one, option 1, we're gonna drape over our pinky, under our ring finger, and over both our middle finger and our pointer finger. Again, turn your palm towards yourself, grab the tail with your thumb and your middle finger. Pull your working yarn down just a little bit so you have some tension. And this is option 2. Right? Option 3 is another variation of the weaving through our fingers. Instead of going over our pinky, we're going to go under the pinky, over the ring, under the middle, over the pointer, turn, pinch. That's option 3. And the last option, which is the option that I use, this is what how I naturally hold my crochet hook. Take your yarn, your working yarn, place it in between your middle and your pointer finger, wrap it 2 times like we did our slip knot. So wrapping it 2 times, turn your hand, pinch with your middle finger and your thumb, and that is how you would hold your hook. So again, I want you to practice with those different methods as we go. Say you start with this one and you realize you need tighter tension, you need looser tension, you're welcome to change it up. And these are not the only methods of holding a crochet yarn. I've seen so many different ones that I'll try to link as many different options just so that you can see and try it out. For my left-handers, it might be a little different how we hold tension. I'll likely have a video specific for left-hand crocheters as well, but for now, this is how most right-hand crocheters, what I've seen is helpful within my students. Okay, so now we're going to talk about getting started with our chain stitch. So if you think of crochet like building blocks, right? Like you're building Legos. The chain stitch is the foundation of most of our crochet projects, especially the ones that work from bottom to top. There are other different ways to start crochet projects, but for beginners, the first thing you learn is the chain stitch. So I want you to look at the anatomy of a chain stitch before we get started. On this diagram, you see these little V's, and I'll use my tapestry needle to kind of point stuff out. So you see these little V's that line up? This knot right here is our slip knot, and we are creating little V's that we will eventually place stitches into. So this is where we're gonna start, our foundation. So each V is 1 stitch. So this V is 1, then 2, 3, and so on. When you flip your work over, so that would be the front side, the back side of your chain stitch has these little bumps. Sometimes when you're a new crocheter, you might see some V's in the front, some backs in the front. That might mean that you've twisted your yarn somewhere along the way. So we want to make sure we keep it as straight as possible, and I'll try to give you some tips for how to straighten your V's as you're working. But that is what I'm going to teach you now. All right, so in your cheat sheet, there are step-by-step guides as well as pictures for you to get your chain stitch started. But I want to show you how to make a chain stitch here. So with whatever tension you decide to use, remember, pick the tension. I'm going to use the wrap around 2 times, holding my tail steady. What we're going to do is we're going to start by putting the hook in front of our yarn and wrapping it around the yarn. That move right there is called a yarn over. We're gonna turn our hook down, all the way down, so that the nose of the hook is pointing down. And then we're gonna slowly pull our right hand so that the loop pulls through our existing loop on our hook. Okay, this is the loop on our hook. Our goal is to get another loop and pull it through. So again, we're gonna put our hook in front, wrap around with the yarn over, hook down, glide through the loop. Notice when I'm coming out, a lot of my beginners, what I will see is that they'll get to this part and then their hook will come out. The way you avoid that, if that's what's happening to you, I want you to yarn over, turn your hook down, and pull at an angle, almost upward. And don't turn your hook up until you're all the way through. So let's do that one more time. All right, notice that where my thumb, where I'm holding this steady, is always close to the recent loop I just made. So I'm not way down here because that's not gonna keep it steady. We wanna make sure we're keeping the project as steady as possible. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go in front of the work, yarn over, turn my hook down, pull through the loop. Keep my hook down until I'm all the way through. Now turn it upwards. One more time, yarn over, turn my hook down, pull through the loop, and turn it upwards. Now, let's count our stitches. Remember, our V stitches. So I want you to pull your hook out, make your loop nice and tall so you don't lose your work. Grab your tapestry needle, and let's start counting our stitches. Look at our V's. This is our slip knot. This right here is our first V. This is my second one. This is my third one. This is my fourth one. This is my fifth. And this is my sixth. Let's make 16 chain stitches together. So that was 6. We want 16. 6, 7, 8, 9. Pull my yarn. Got a little bit of a knot. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now notice when I was yarning over, I'm gonna do one more. When I yarned over and pulled through and my hook is down, when I turn it back up, I'm dragging the loop, the new loop, all the way down to the base, that rubber, silicone base of my hook. Most beginners, I've seen some crochet hooks that, just have that metal part going all the way down with a thumb rest. I would recommend something like this. This is what you'll get in your kit because it's a great stopper of just getting you used to stopping at that point. And crochet hooks come in all shapes and sizes. The diameter of your hook determines basically the size of your loop. So if your loop is too big, if your loops are looking like this, then you're not tightening your yarn enough. So if that happens, you're just gonna pull the working yarn so that it can unravel, okay? We don't wanna pull this up like this. Once you come down, pull that working yarn to the size diameter of your hook. Tighten it up again, yarn over and pull. If you pull a little bit like this, that's okay. Just make sure you pull it down. For my tight crocheters, those that tend to have very, very tight stitches, notice that you can kind of see through my V-stitch. I'm doing that intentionally, right? Some people prefer a little bit of a tighter stitch, but remember, we're building blocks. So we're gonna have to work back into these stitches. So we don't wanna make them too tight, we don't wanna make them too loose. We want them in the middle. For my tight crocheters, those who are very, very tight, what might happen is you might get here and you can't pull your loop through at all. What I always do, what I often tell my students is I would take your tapestry needle when you're here. And if you can place your tapestry needle in underneath that loop, right? So I'm gonna use my finger here. If you can place your tapestry needle through here, then you are loose enough. If your tapestry needle will not fit there, if it's so tight that it's pretty much flush with the hook, then your hook is not going to be able to get through there. So loosen up just a little bit so that you're able to pull through. I wanted to change the angle so you could really follow along with what I'm doing. So remember, these are our V stitches. And what we're going to do, this first V, the loop on our hook does not count as a stitch, so we're gonna skip that. The first V right underneath that loop, we're also gonna skip. We're gonna go into the second chain stitch from our hook. So that's the first one. Here's the second one. This is where we're gonna go. We're gonna take our hook and we're gonna insert right in between the V stitch, just like that. Wrap the yarn around with the yarn over, turn my hook down, and pull through that loop that we inserted in. You should have 2 loops on your hook. You're gonna yarn over again, turn your hook down, pull through both of those 2 loops and then pull up. Take a deep breath. That was a little complicated. Let's do it one more time. Okay. The loop on my hook, remember, does not count. The first stitch kind of got a little squished, but I can see the second leg. There's one leg, there's the second leg of the V. So I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to go into this one. The reason why it's kind of loose right now is because we already went into that, so it's pretty obvious. But you're going to go into your second chain of the hook, second chain stitch, insert your hook from front to back, yarn over, pull up a loop nice and tall, yarn over again, pull through 2. When you look at your stitch, do you see, I'm going to take my loop out and grab my tapestry needle. This right here is our first single crochet stitch, and it created another V. So to keep our training wheels going, we want to remember this is our first stitch. We're going to place a stitch marker right underneath those 2 loops that we just made. So right here, that's where that goes. Nice and again, this is our training wheel. So this tells us this is where we start. So this is where we need to end when we come back around. Like I said, it'll make more sense when we get back to here, but keep that there. Now let's go to the next chain stitch. That was 1 chain stitch. The next one is right next to it. There's our V right here. So I'm going to insert my hook from front to back, pushing through, pull up a loop through that V, through that chain, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, and pull through those 2. Do it one more time. Insert my hook into the next V stitch, pull up a loop, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, and pull through 2. This is my next V stitch right here. That's a V. The next hole. Don't be tempted to go in here. Notice that it's a little, you can tell where you've just gone because the hole is a little pulled, right? And so we're not going to reinsert there. We're going to go right here into the next one. And I use my middle finger on my left hand to kind of help me guide where my hook is going. Yarn over and pull a loop through that. Yarn over and pull through those 2. And there you go. So you're going to make a single crochet stitch all the way down your work. Okay? All the way down your work. Insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And again, all the way down until you get to the last stitch. So I'm going to do that pretty quickly. So when you get to your last stitch, so I'm going to my very last stitch right here. I'm going to insert it the same way. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2. Once I get to the end of my work, I'm going to chain 1 and then pull up this loop nice and tall. So what we're going to do before we keep going is we are going to count our stitches to make sure that we know what our count is. And look at that, we have V's just like we did before. We're always going to create these little V's that we'll be working into. So remember, this blue stitch marker was our start. So this is number 1. So that's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 stitches. So we started with, you're always going to start with one less stitch than before. So when we did it, we have 14 stitches. We started with 15 chain stitches. Because we skipped that first one, we're going to have one less. That's the formula for counting your stitches. So you start with 15, you should have 14 single crochets. If you start with 16, you should have 15. If you start with 32, you should have 31. So that is the formula. So making sure we have our appropriate stitch count. Remember, started with 15 and now we have 14 stitches. We want to make sure every round moving forward has 14 stitches. If the next round that you have has 12 stitches, has 18 stitches, then you've either added or subtracted stitches along the way. And again, I will show you how to do that. Now remember, when you're counting your stitches, you are looking at the 2 V's right here. 2 V's right here. These are your stitches. Okay, so now let's turn our work and continue. Okay, so remember we had our chain stitches. We were just at our end. Once we were at the last stitch, I'm going to do it again for you so you can see it. Oop. Our last stitch is here. Insert, oopsies. There she is. She's just a little hiding. I tightened it up too tight. Okay, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That was our last stitch. Remember, we're gonna chain 1 and we're physically gonna turn our work around. So now we are looking at the back side of our work. So the back side of our single crochets, see, they have those little bumps. Those little bumps. The front side looks like this, but the back side has these little bumps. And so now we're looking at the back side, and when we turn to the back side, we have to tilt our work just a little bit towards ourselves so we can see our V's. Remember, we made a chain stitch, so that does not count. The loop on our hook doesn't count. The chain stitch doesn't count. But we want to insert our hook right underneath these 2 loops right here. That is our very first single crochet of the second row. So same thing, we're going to insert underneath both of the loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2. Now, the same thing that we did when we started, every new row, the first single crochet stitch you're going to make, you're going to mark it with a stitch marker. So I'm going to use a white stitch marker, going underneath the V's of my next row, that's row 2. I'm going to insert a stitch marker, just like that. Okay, so that was stitch number 1. Now, remember we counted 14 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I just want to make sure we have 14, okay? So now I do want to note, because I had started with 16 chains. Well, I thought I started with 16 and I actually ended up with 15. So regardless, let's say, we have 16 and you want to keep going, that's okay. Just maintain the stitch count with whatever you have in the previous row. We all make mistakes, so we're just going to practice as we go. So our next one, this is our V right here. Let me point it out to you with the tapestry needle again. Turning my work towards myself. This loop and this loop. That is my next stitch. So this is where my hook is gonna go. Insert, pull up a loop, pull it up nice and tall to the height of the previous loop, yarn over and pull through those 2. That's your next single crochet. Turn my work towards myself so I can see my V's. There they are. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2. Insert, turn so you can see the V's, and it will definitely get easier the more that you do it. You will be able to really see that first stitch where we did our chain stitch. Honestly, that's the hardest one. These get progressively easier as you work. So you'll be able to see your stitches a little bit more. Now there are some of my students who are doing single crochet stitches who, when I look at your work, what often happens is you stick your hook only under 1 loop instead of both. So it almost looks right, but not quite. That is a different type of single crochet. We want to make sure we're going under both of the loops. Pull up, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over and pull through 2. So that is, make sure you're going through both of the loops, and then make sure you're going through 1 stitch at a time. So I just did this one. You can sometimes accidentally stick another single crochet in the same loop. That will mess up our stitch count. So make sure we're counting, and you can count as you go too. So there's a lot of different ways to help you with maintaining stitch count, but you're gonna find a way that works for you. So we're doing all the way, and notice we put a stitch marker. We're at our very end. This was the very first stitch that we made in the previous row, so this is where we need to end our work. So we're going to remove stitch marker, place it on the side, and place your last single crochet in that same stitch. So under those 2 loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay? Chain 1 to end your work, and then turn. So now we're going to count. Chain 1 that we just did does not count, so we're not going to count that. So we're going to count starting here. This was our very first stitch we did, so this should be our very last one. So let's count. We should have 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Give yourself a pat on the back. I was worried for a second there. But you did. So you should end with the appropriate number of stitches that you started. Now, to continue, you're going to repeat the same thing you just did. So you're going to repeat row 2 for all the rows moving forward. So we're here. We're going to turn our work. We've already chained 1 and turned our work. This is our first stitch. Remember, we're skipping. The loop on our hook doesn't count. We skip that chain 1 that we created, and we place our stitch underneath both loops of the previous single crochet. Insert our hook, yarn over, pull through, make the loop nice and tall, the same height as the loop on my hook, yarn over and pull through 2. Remember, the first stitch that we make, we're always gonna put our stitch marker. Remember, they're serving as really our training wheels. Okay, so until eventually you won't need them anymore because you'll be able to see it. But once you're getting started, you need to make sure you're counting as much as possible. So this is our very first one. So stitch number 1 gets a stitch marker, and it's trying to fight with me today. Oh Lord. There we go. Right here. That very first stitch. So this last row I want to count with you because there's different ways to maintain stitch count. So I'm going to count with you as we work. So that was 1. So this is number 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and where my stitch marker is 14. So I'm gonna remove this and place 14 right here. Beautiful. Chain 1 and turn. Put another stitch mark, put another single crochet stitch right here. Pull up my loop nice and tall and place my stitch marker right here. Okay, that is how we're gonna do it. Just like that. Now, say that you are in the middle of your work, you're working very hard, you're tirelessly working your rows, and your stomach is grumbling, it's time to eat some lunch, right? That's why we include so many stitch markers for you. If you need to pause at any point in your work, you're gonna pull up your loop pretty high, remove your hook, grab your third stitch marker, we'll use purple, and you're gonna place it in that live loop. Close the loop. And this is what will keep your work from unraveling. The worst thing ever is when you're working stitches, you get a lot of progress and you come back and, you know, maybe your cat or your husband unravels your stitches, you know, unknowingly. And so make sure this is a good way to make sure your work stays safe. So you're gonna repeat that try to repeat it up to 10 rows, as much of a square as you would like. For my example that I had here, I actually chained 21 and I did 17 rows. And the best way to know if you made a square is if you can fold it in half. It's like a triangle. So there are a couple more rows I could go to make it into a perfect square, but I didn't feel like it. So as many rounds as you feel like you have practice, this should be your single crochet swatch. Notice that all of my rows are like equal in height. No one is like super tall or super skinny or super short. You really want to practice getting them pretty equal. You know, the more equal you can get it, the better it will reveal, you know, your final work, especially if you're practicing. And as a beginner, you know, you'll learn as you go. And those stitch markers will really help you maintain that perfect edging, right? Sometimes I remember the very first crochet swatch I did was supposed to be a square and it turned into more of a triangle. And so sometimes your work will kind of cave this way when you start losing stitches, or it'll expand that way when you start adding stitches. So as much as you can, count after each row, and then use your stitch markers as training wheels. So the last slide we're gonna show you is how to fasten off and end your project. All right, so at the very end, so I undid the knots. You could see how I finished it. But this tail, I try to get the tail about the length of the project, right? So a little over the length of the project. Maybe you want to get it to the length of the bottom tail if you want. But longer to the tail, the better, honestly. By the very end of my work, what I like to do is I like to add a chain 1. And then I just pull that loop all the way through and tighten. Okay, that's how I like to end my projects. And now you're gonna take your tapestry needle. So you have a tapestry needle. The way to thread your yarn, you could do it, you know, the old school way where you stick it through the eye of the needle, but I think that takes too long. So what I'm gonna show you is lay the yarn just like this over the tapestry needle. Just lay it on top, make it kind of tight. Pull that out. And now insert that into the loop. I don't know why, that's the easiest for me. You can do it whatever way feels good for you, but that's how I do it. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your tapestry needle and you're just gonna weave your tail underneath some loops. So I'm gonna go underneath this one. Maybe I'll go over here. You know, as many as possible. You're just gonna kind of stick it through and then pull. And as you pull through, it'll start to hide the tail in your work. So again, let's go under this one. We're gonna go under here. I'm just gonna weave through, right? And sometimes I'm going one, I'm skipping one. I'm just gonna try to poke it as much as possible. And you know, you don't want to overkill, but weaving your work basically keeps it from unraveling in the future. So I'm going to go in different directions. So I went from left to right, and I'm going to try to go up and down. I'm going to go back around. So however much until you feel like it's secure. Right now I think I'm overkilling it, but just want to show you how to kind of get it around. So here's the last one. Just like that. I'm going to pull. Oops, just got tight. I'm going to pull. And once I'm satisfied with the amount of times I've weaved in my work, I'm going to take my pair of scissors, my cute little pair of scissors. Do not cut your project. Try not to cut your project. Sometimes it happens. But as close as you can to the project without cutting it, you're just going to snip that. And there is your swatch. Now, you're going to need to do the same thing for your starting tail. Now, that's why we try to make our tail the length of our palm. So this is a little too short. So when you start, make sure you have your tail pretty long so you can weave it in later. And most of our projects are looking a little curved. You know, it's not as flat as possible. That is where blocking comes into play, and I'll likely have a video about blocking at another day. But this is the end of our Beginner 1 class. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment below if you feel like you were able to really get something out of it. Feel free to share your completed swatch on your social media and tag me in it so that I can see your work. But that is all for now. Stay tuned for Beginner Class 2 coming at a later date. Thanks, guys. Bye. Hey, y'all. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you were able to take something away from it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share all of these videos that you find helpful. If you find them helpful, be sure to like and share as well. I'm really excited to see what your work is, so be sure to tag me on social media. You can find me at all my handles. It's Judah David Creations, and you can also check the description below for details and links. Stay tuned for more events and for more projects that might be coming up. I'm just so excited to see what is in store. So without further ado, I'll see you guys next time. Bye, friends.